think we do know, and I think the Australian public, has seen a lot of information about the approvals process. We know that vaccines have saved, millions and millions of lives. They've been really doing a remarkable job in that regard. 20 million lives in the first year of the pandemic alone, and that they've had an overwhelmingly great safety profile. Of course, there are people who do have, health events going on in their lives, and it's perfectly reasonable that they question whether that could be related to the vaccine or indeed to anything else that was going on for them at the time, like COVID itself. Are these events, what are they caused by? It's understandable that people will ask that question. And I think we just have to be really open and clear in the way that we put the scientific evidence forward and discuss this.
Interested in your response to what Kerryn Phelps had to say about regulators censoring public comments, raising questions about the safety of COVID jabs. Did that happen?
Look, from my perspective, I've seen, not just here in Australia, but across the whole of the globe, an enormous amount of effort, an enormous amount of data, and an enormous amount of transparency around what has and hasn't been found to be associated with COVID-19 vaccines. People will remember back about, a year and a half or so ago now, where we were rolling out the vaccines and we had to tell people that there was this rare risk of a clotting disorder, and we didn't know about that. We knew about it as it emerged, and we were using vaccines, and that was put into the benefit risk equation when vaccines were then recommended for that particular one, AstraZeneca. We've seen some very rare cases of some heart muscle inflammation with vaccines, and that's been very clearly communicated. It's again, I think, factored into those recommendations, putting forward recommendations for vaccines for different age groups based on the benefit compared to the risk, alongside looking at the effectiveness, of course. So I hope that as people kind of look across the board at the evidence and recognise what extraordinary circumstances, we have been in, that they do see, the efforts of many people across the globe in a connected way to be as transparent as possible about safety. Obviously, we can never talk about an individual's, journey, and that's up to them and their healthcare practitioner or practitioners.
With the benefit of hindsight, do you think the public health messaging in Australia could have been a little different?
Oh, look, I think public health messaging can always be better. I think everybody who messages tries to ensure that it can be as good as they can manage. We can still do better with public health messaging, and I guess that's why I'm here trying to talk to you today. Yes. Because I think we really just have to acknowledge when people have had something go wrong in their lives. We have to talk from the scientific evidence about what we do know can be linked with vaccines and what we know there is no evidence for being linked with vaccines. And then, but still care about the person and what's happened to them, and really talk about what vaccines can do and can't do. We're going to be living with this coronavirus for decades to come, but our ability to vaccinate, use antivirals, all of the other measures we've employed now, have meant that we're seeing far less serious disease than we were in the beginning of the pandemic, thank goodness. And hopefully for most people that means a really a not too interrupted holiday period.
You did talk to us about some of the more serious side effects that were reported earlier on after the rollout began. Are authorities continuing to track adverse events, and how are they responding to them?
Well, they're absolutely continuing to track in a whole multifaceted way and linking, with many groups internationally. So from the National Centre for Immunisation Research, we've got about, linkages into about 5 or 6 different programs. We're linked with multiple countries and different groups around the world. Our TGA meets regularly with all the other major regulators. There's a huge amount of work still going on. And in a way, it is to look a bit for that kind of are there any late, undetected, patterns that might be going on? The key thing is here that we've got to use really good science, because there are a lot of other things that have caused health conditions, in the community. I mean, it's been pretty rough living through this pandemic. It's had a big impact on health and well-being. And we've got to take into account all of those things, as well as COVID itself, underlying conditions. But overwhelmingly, we've still seen, how safe vaccines are for so many people, and how, on balance, they're so much better than having a serious bout of COVID itself.
Just finally, there is a question mark over Commonwealth funding for long COVID clinics. Do you believe that funding needs to continue?
Look, I think I won't specifically comment on the funding, but I will say that we do need to provide care, in a comprehensive, multidisciplinary way for people who are experiencing, concerning and prolonged negative outcomes after COVID infection. There are actually a number of other infectious diseases where we can have, post-infectious range of symptoms. It varies by the disease. And I think, we do need to have a strong scaffold around supporting and providing care to those individuals.